Hey guys, how's it going? I am banging the Tomica drum again today, and let me tell you, these cars have really been bugging me. They're not bugging me because they're bad, they're bugging me because they're good, but they're also flawed. So what I want to do with this video is I want to take what I feel is the major flaw in this design, or in these castings, which is the wheels, and we're going to fix that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to wheel swap the Nissan GTR, and then I'm going to also change the stance. We're going to lower this car just a little bit, actually a lot, if you're thinking in terms of scale, and you're going to see this makes a big difference with this car. So hang tight, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so what we've got rotating on the stand is the Tomica mainline Nissan GTR. Great looking casting, I feel. Really love the paint. I think the details are there. I think the casting quality is there, but here's the wheels. They just look awful. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this car and we're just going to do a quick and dirty wheel swap. Now with Tomica, wheel swapping is super easy. Once you get the cars apart, all you need to do is pull those old wheels out, slap in some new ones. And what I'm using here is Hot Wheels mainline 10-spoke wheels. You get these with many of the dollar cars from Hot Wheels, and they look really good. And as you see, I think they suit. Okay, so as this car spins, there's a couple things I want to point out. The first thing is the car is really just too tall still, and we'll be able to fix that pretty easily. But there's another issue, and if you look at that back wheel well, you'll notice that that back tire is sitting back just a little bit too far. And it's one of those things that it's not super noticeable, but once you see it, you just can't unsee it. And I just can't stop looking at it whenever I see this car. So, like I said, we're going to fix the stance. We're going to lower the car, and then we're also going to fix that wheel well problem. So let me show you. So what I did is I basically shim that axle up. Let's pull this out. So let's see here. If you'll notice, here's the slots right here that your axle fits into, right here and right here. And between those slots and below the axle, you've got this nice little pad right here. And what I've done is I've just shimmed up the axle by sliding in a little piece underneath this, and then the spring and axle clamp on that and keep it in place. Don't need to glue it. Don't need to do anything like that. The action of the suspension keeps everything in place for you. And again, that way you can revert this back to factory easy. No troubles at all. You do no damage to the car except by opening up the base. So let me show you. I used little pieces of styrene, and I cut these off in strips. I started with a strip, that was probably about 4 inches long, and then I cut pieces out that are just wide enough to fit in here. Let me show you how that works. Alright, so once you've got those in place, just put in your axle. There we go. And just like that, you've got that axle shimmed up and it's ready to go. Now, you can see how this spring has pushed that axle as far to the back as possible. This is the rear axle right here. If you want to put this in a position that's centered inside that wheel well, you can also shim the axle forward. Let me show you how I've done that. And again, I just used a couple tiny pieces of styrene, and then you push your axle forward, shove that in there, make sure it's in place. Okay. So I'm using my fingers, I'm pushing that axle forward, and then I'm just sliding in the shim. There we go. And now the axle is actually pushed forward as far as it can go, which is what centers it in that wheel well opening. So now just repeat the process on the front. There we go. I've noticed that the axles in the front center better than the axles in the back, so you don't really need to shim those axles. And there we go. So there is still the issue with the axles being too wide. I'll address that axle problem here in just a second, but before I do, I wanted to show you what the car looked like with the new wheels, and now that it's been lowered, and now that we've got that rear tire centered in the wheel well. And let me tell you, I think this looks really nice, and if this is where you want to stop, I think this looks just fine. These plastic tires look good, and this lowered stance looks great. Now the next step will be narrowing that axle, and that's going to be a little bit more fiddly, a little more complicated, but not terribly so. So let me show you what I did to accomplish that. Okay, so here we have the base with the freshly narrowed Hot Wheels axle with the Real Rider tires. And what I had to do with this, it was a little more fiddly than what you'd normally do with this type of wheel swap. I had to size the axle tube narrow enough that it fit between the two notches, because I need that steel Hot Wheels axle to fit in the notches so that I could push the whole wheel forward so it can fit in the wheel well. And then I also needed to make sure that the wheels themselves were wide enough that they properly fit the width of the car. So I had to break out the calipers to get this done. So it was a little harder than this job would normally be, but it's not rocket science either, so just take your time and you'll get this right. Okay, so I've got all the mods done, but before I unveil the car and show you how it turned out, let me first remind you what this originally looked like. So here is the Tomica Nissan GTR in its stock dressing. We have these black plastic wheels, high water stance, and while it doesn't look bad, I think it looks quite good actually. I just can't help but feel that it doesn't live up to its $5 price point. And here's how it finally turned out. And you know what? I was really satisfied with the final result. The 6-spoke Real Riders really look good on this casting, and the lowered stance just, I don't know, it just looks correct. And just in case you're wondering, this car does roll, and it has just a little bit of suspension travel left. Okay guys, I think that's going to do it. You know what, I feel like this was a positive outcome, and you know what, I'm just going to move on to the next project. So guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Alright, take care.